What's up YouTube? Toy Pulse here, and today we're going to take a look at the Creative Comics and Collectibles Collectible Legends Blue Beetle. First though, I think I need to give you some background. Creative Comics and Collectibles has launched a line called Collectible Legends, which seems to mostly focus on a mix of public domain superheroes from the Golden Age of comics, though there are some modern characters mixed in. Being a huge Blue Beetle fan, this was a must-buy for me. This figure is based on the Golden Age Garret with one T, very important, version that first appeared in Mystery Men comics in 1939. This character was pretty big for the time, even going on to have his own radio show, which was a huge deal in the 1930s and 40s. Eventually, Fox Comics sold the rights to the character to Charlton Comics, which eventually reworked the character into a new version, Dan Garret, two Ts, with different powers and abilities. This version wielding a mystical scarab and shouting the words Kajida to power up. He eventually became the predecessor of a new Blue Beetle, created by Steve Ditko, the well-known Ted Kord version. When DC Comics purchased the rights to the Charlton stable of heroes in the 80s, the Dan Garret 2Ts version went with them, whereas this version became public domain. And since this is likely the only version of the original Blue Beetle that we're ever going to get, because DC Comics has pretty much forgotten the character exists, I just had to grab it. Let's take a look at the packaging, which is serviceable and collector friendly, which is nice, though it's nothing too amazing. It holds the figure well enough. There's also a nice bio on the back that gives us some information on the character, as well as product shots for the company's Cassie from Hack Slash figures, and a variant of this Blue Beetle that's in his more well-known red and blue look. The variant was $10 more, so I had to pass on it, but it is a little more comic accurate to the DC Comics version of the character, so if that's important to you, that might be the one you want to grab. Otherwise, it's the exact same figure. Beetle comes with 4 sets of hands, which is really nice. 2 of the hands have pistols already molded into them, while he also gets another set of finger trigger hands in case you want to arm him up with something else. He also comes with 2 fists and 2 grabbing hands. More hand options is always appreciated, so hats off to Creative Comics for getting this part right. The sculpt of the figure is pretty plain, though it is fitting with the source material, depending on what you're looking at. The figure is molded in a dark blue plastic with subtle black dark wash across the entire figure that helps to bring out the sculpt. There's also some really nice paintwork on the face, which also has a great sculpt, though the scarab on my figure's cowl is a little off. There's no bleed in the gloves or the hands, which is also appreciated. The belt, however, did not come out so great, and the sculpt of the little scarab is completely lost in the yellow paint apps. He also has a sculpted skirt, though it's a little shorter than the source material, but it doesn't hinder articulation. It's a separate piece, but does seem pretty well attached. Now, in the fiction, the character was always depicted as having a chainmail sculpt. Now, the way this was depicted is going to vary depending on what you're looking at. If you're looking at the covers, which tended to be a bit more realistic looking and detailed, then you can definitely see the chainmail sculpt. If you're looking at the individual pages or panels within the comic, they tended to be this more plain, colorful, bright, sort of like generic thing, because they had limited color palettes back then. So I think what's here works. I would have liked to have seen an all chainmail sculpt, but I think that might have been too cost prohibitive for the company, so I get it. The proportions of the figure are also mostly solid, though the chest and abdomen feel a little bit off. The lower torso particularly is just dwarfed by the barrel chest, but again, it mostly works. You really can see it depending on how you're posing him, but I think if he's just like in kind of some action poses or whatnot, it's fine. But it's definitely something that I noticed when I took him out of the packaging. Okay, as far as articulation goes, it's pretty good. It definitely, like, kind of what you see is what you get. It's a little surprising in some ways, and both good and bad. So he's got a nice range of motion on his head. You can look up pretty far. Nice swivel on a ball peg. Left and right all around, pretty good. Nice ball-like joints at the shoulders. You can kind of move around, which is nice. Double jointed elbows. Only go up to here because the glove blocks a little bit, but it's pretty good. You've got little swivel joints at the wrist. Swivel joints at this wrist right here. This doesn't move at all, unfortunately. No cut at the glove, which is kind of a bummer, but it's okay. You can get enough poses out of them because you get the biceps. Waist does full swivel, which is nice. He's got a little bit of an ab crunch. Kind of moves up and down. It does turn though. It's a little ugly, but it does kind of give a nice turn, so you can really get some nice poses out of him. He does have some thigh cuts, which is also very nice. The hips can't really display it much more than that. It really feels like it's going to break if you try to push it past that, which kind of sucks, but he does have double jointed knees, and yeah, you can touch, which is very good. And he's got swivels at the ankles, and it's not quite a rocker joint. Oh no, he does have the kind of very similar to a Marvel Legends rocker joint. So pretty good articulation. I think he's going to do most of the poses you want to get him into without any fuss. No real big surprises. I'm really surprised by the quality of the plastic on this thing. I expected this to be just, I don't know. I never heard of this company's, and they're, from what I can tell, they're really small. So I expected this thing to be kind of just, I don't know. I thought it was going to break, and it's definitely not perfect. Like you can see there's some separation here, and but for the most part, it's honestly really solid. There's no stickiness. There's no, like, if you heard the horror stories of the recent NECA Phantom Wave figures, yeah, Flash Gordon, those figures, those things, like this doesn't feel like it's going to snap or anything. Even changing the hands in and out is pretty seamless. It doesn't feel like there's like a breakage. We'll see how it holds up over time, but overall I'm pretty pleased with it. As far as scale, he scales pretty well with most 6-inch action figure lines, which is nice. Here he is with the DC Direct Blue Beetle from way back in the day. So these figures tended to be a little bigger, so that's more of like a 7-inch, kind of close to the 7-inch scale mark, but I think he looked good with him. Here he is with the DC Universe Classics Blue Beetle, and I think he scales pretty well with that. A little shorter, but nothing too crazy. Here he is with the DC Universe Classics Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle, and this is where the scale starts to fall apart a little bit. Though I kind of think that this Jaime is sort of out of scale anyway. He's just sort of like, I don't know if he's supposed to be a smaller teenager, if he's bigger because of the armor, but he's generally bigger than that. Like, he's almost the same size as the Ted Core Blue Beetle, so there's really no clear sense of scale with the DC Universe Classics anyway, so I don't think it's too big of a deal. Here he is with the Marvel Legends Legendary Riders Captain America, a couple of Golden Age bad boys looking to take on some bootleggers and stop some insurance fraud scams and take on the ne'er-do-wells of the underworld. So final impressions, I think if you're a Blue Beetle fan, I think this figure is a must-buy, especially if you're a fan of Golden Age superheroes. There's just not a lot of companies doing action figures of this type of character, so I think that's really cool. And I don't think, honestly, we're ever going to see another Dan Garret figure released by anyone anywhere, so that kind of also makes it a must-buy for anyone who's interested in that. But for me, it was a must-buy because I'm a huge Blue Beetle guy, and I needed a Dan Garret. I've got Ted Cord, I've got Jaime, so Dan Garret was just an instant purchase, and I'm glad to finally get him in hand and to play with them and to fill another hole in my Blue Beetle shelf. So again, my hat's off to Creative Comics and Collectibles. I think y'all did a hell of a job with this, and you made this little Blue Beetle fanboy proud. Thank you so much for watching. Please take a second to like and subscribe, and please let me know in the comments, are you a fan of the Blue Beetle? Have you ever heard of this version of the Blue Beetle? Is this a figure that you'll be picking up? Let me know. I'd love to talk Blue Beetle with you. Also, go ahead and check out my Instagram at ToyPulse. But until next time, take care and Kajida.
Sweeping down upon the underworld of smash gangland comes the friend of the unfortunate, enemy of criminals. A mysterious, all-powerful character with a problem to the police. A crusader for law. In reality, Dan Garret, a rookie patrolman, loved by everyone but suspected by none of being the Blue Beetle.